The situation along the Israel-Lebanon border has escalated dramatically as Hezbollah launched one of its largest barrages of rockets in recent memory, firing 130 rockets into Israel on Saturday. This significant escalation not only rattled communities across Israel but also stoked fears of a wider regional conflict. According to reports, Hezbollah targeted several Israeli sites, including a military intelligence unit, an airbase, and various settlements. While Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system managed to intercept many of the rockets, some projectiles breached defenses, injuring at least 11 people in central Israel and damaging infrastructure in certain areas. This unprecedented attack highlights the deepening complexity of the regional conflict, especially as it aligns with broader hostilities in Gaza and rising tensions involving Iran. In its public statements, Hezbollah framed the operation as a response to Israeli military actions in Gaza and Lebanon. The group, which is widely recognized as Iran's proxy in Lebanon, has also long maintained a combative stance toward Israel, further solidifying this posture with Saturday's extensive rocket attacks. For many in Israel, Saturday night was marked by intense anxiety as air raid sirens wailed across several cities and residents sought shelter. Families huddled in bomb shelters, hoping the Iron Dome would once again protect them. Emergency responders were dispatched to assist the injured and assess damage, though much of the debris and remnants of the attacks still littered neighborhoods by morning. The barrage not only took a physical toll but also left a significant psychological mark on residents in the affected areas. Many voiced concerns about whether such assaults could become more frequent and questioned the long-term implications for Israel's security along its northern border. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, responded swiftly, carrying out airstrikes on Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon. According to IDF sources, these strikes aimed to neutralize launch sites and destroy Hezbollah's missile infrastructure in the area. This response is part of Israel's broader strategy of immediate and forceful retaliation against perceived threats from both state and non-state actors. Israel has long held a zero-tolerance policy on cross-border aggression, with a focus on swiftly neutralizing threats before they can destabilize Israeli society or military operations. Military analysts believe that the scope and immediacy of the IDF's counterattacks reflect Israel's determination to deter further aggression, though it also carries the risk of triggering an escalatory spiral. In a region where tensions are constantly simmering, the exchange of rocket fire between Hezbollah and the IDF represents a potential flashpoint that could shift into a full-blown confrontation. Israeli leaders have condemned Hezbollah's actions, warning that continued rocket attacks will prompt even harsher military responses. Israeli officials have stressed that they will do whatever it takes to protect the country's citizens and prevent any long-term destabilization along the northern border. For Hezbollah, this assault marks a tactical statement aimed at reinforcing its position in Lebanon while signaling solidarity with Palestinian factions in Gaza. Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, has often articulated support for the Palestinian cause, and the group's actions seem to align with a broader strategy of pressuring Israel on multiple fronts. While Hezbollah's rhetoric has been combative, its actions demonstrate a willingness to escalate, likely fueled by material and logistical support from Iran. Analysts point out that Iran has an interest in fomenting multiple sources of conflict that stretch Israel's defenses thin, thereby indirectly supporting Hamas's campaign in Gaza. The attack is also symbolic in its timing. The latest conflict in Gaza has drawn widespread condemnation from various international groups and raised renewed calls for a ceasefire. Hezbollah's actions could be seen as an attempt to amplify the pressure on Israel by reminding the world of the broader coalition of groups willing to oppose Israel's policies and actions. The strategy of multi-front pressure could effectively drain Israeli resources and exhaust its Iron Dome system, which, despite its effectiveness, has limitations when faced with sustained, high-volume attacks. In Lebanon, Hezbollah's rocket attacks elicit mixed reactions. The group is both revered and criticized within Lebanon's borders, as it holds a dominant position in Lebanese politics and wields significant military power. Many in Lebanon see Hezbollah's actions as provocations that risk inviting devastating retaliation from Israel, which could harm Lebanese civilians and infrastructure. For others, however, Hezbollah's attacks represent a form of resistance against perceived Israeli aggression, and the group's willingness to engage Israel head-on is a source of national pride. Lebanon's government, which is often reluctant to publicly condemn Hezbollah due to the group's substantial political influence, has so far remained silent on the recent escalation. This silence underscores the complex power dynamics within Lebanon, where Hezbollah operates largely independently of the central government and maintains its own military forces and supply chains. Lebanon's internal divisions and Hezbollah's unique position complicate the possibility of de-escalation, as any attempt by the Lebanese government to intervene could risk political backlash and further instability. The international community has watched this escalation with growing concern. The United Nations, European Union, and the United States have called for restraint from both sides, warning that further violence could spiral into a broader regional conflict with dire humanitarian consequences. Diplomats have been working to prevent an escalation, hoping that dialogue and pressure could prevent both Israel and Hezbollah from engaging in prolonged military action. However, the United States and other Western nations have also reiterated their support for Israel's right to self-defense, signaling a complex diplomatic balance between condemning violence and supporting Israel's security measures. Meanwhile, the humanitarian impact of the ongoing violence has become a focal point of concern. Civilians on both sides of the border remain vulnerable, as they face the constant threat of rocket attacks and airstrikes. Schools, businesses, and daily activities have been disrupted as both Israelis and Lebanese fear for their safety. The conflict's toll on children and families, who are most affected by the psychological strain of living in a conflict zone, has prompted numerous humanitarian organizations to call for an immediate cessation of hostilities and the establishment of safe zones for civilians. Reports indicate that as the conflict intensifies, Hezbollah has been working to bolster its defensive capabilities within Lebanon, preparing for the possibility of a full-scale Israeli response. Observers speculate that Hezbollah may have strategically positioned its forces and weaponry within civilian areas, a tactic often criticized for putting civilians at risk but one that complicates Israel's retaliatory measures. This tactic is particularly problematic in densely populated areas of southern Lebanon, where even limited Israeli airstrikes could lead to significant civilian casualties and infrastructure damage.